Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today, we are here to discuss The Mandalorian and Grogu. And somewhat begrudgingly, I have to sit here and say I actually quite enjoyed it. Now, is everything that people are saying about this movie true? Yeah. Is it more content than cinema? Yeah. Does Mando really go anywhere in this movie? No, I don't believe so. I feel he starts the movie sort of as he ends the movie, or rather the other way around. Do I feel like it has any kind of large sweeping repercussions for the Star Wars universe at a time where we could really do with that to kind of shake everyone back up and get everyone reinvested in it? No. However, did I enjoy it? And did I think it was a fun romp within the Star Wars universe that frankly was maybe needed to set the pace for Dave Filoni's Star Wars and kind of give us a sense of, okay, it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It wasn't any magnum opus. Maybe, I don't know. Look, is there a argument to be made for what's the word? Is there an argument to be made for something being so inoffensive that it becomes offensive because of that? Because it didn't take any risks. Is there a margin for error in that they didn't do anything on a larger scale? Maybe there is. Maybe when we first heard about this movie, we thought it was going to be some big, spectacular new start for Mando or big end for Mando, and it was neither of those. And does it feel like a bit of television, like kind of tacked together? Again, yes. I don't know. There's just something ineffable about this one, and it's weird to say that, but I think it's because of Grogu. I genuinely think that's the case. I think Grogu as a character did a lot of lifting in this movie. Because it's the kind of puppeteering work that we so wanted in Star Wars for so long. It's done so well and such a high caliber that you forget that this thing isn't even real, and you kind of become so attached to it. There were so many moments in the movie where you're enraptured by Grogu, even in a part of the movie which obviously has an extended sequence of just Grogu doing Grogu things. I think that. I think also the fact that you do get, and opposite to what I said about Mando, I think you do get some character development here for Grogu, and especially as a mirror to Rota the Hutt, or Rota, in that they are both characters defined by who their parent is, and they are both character. I mean, obviously, that's now becoming a joke about Rota saying that like every other line. Jabba the Hutt's maybe my father, but I'm not like him, kind of thing. But anyway, but also the fact that they're long-lived species who are trying to find their way in a galaxy that is constantly changing far more in their infancy than they themselves, and more to the point that they both went through very similar scenarios, and they both have to kind of push through that. They both have to kind of go they both got away from their original cultures to new cultures in a way. Grogu was intended to be a Jedi. Rota was meant to be the heir to Jabba the Hutt, and neither of those want that legacy. Neither of them want that. One's picked to become a Mandalorian. One is picked to become, now at the end of this movie, part of the New Republic, which is interesting to say the least. I think this movie's about Grogu, and you do see Grogu's powers kind of expand a bit, seeing him heft Rota up during the movie, and seeing him kind of capably find his way to save, obviously, Mando at one point in the movie. I think the idea here is that Grogu is kind of moving. We're probably going to see some kind of jump or some kind of allusion to Grogu showing up in these later movies that they're now going to be doing during the at post episode 9 era. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him kind of appear there as somewhat more of a capable person, not dissimilar to how Rota showed up in this one. It's sort of a passing of the baton in a way. I think it's hard because there's not lots to say about the movie itself. Do I feel like there's anything that's wider implying for the Star Wars universe? No. Do I feel like the score was anything crazy? I actually didn't mind the score. I thought some of the motifs that they used for the music was quite interesting. Apart from, I kept thinking that one of them was going to be the beginning of Sweet Dreams. Just the I can't even do the I can't even I can't do it. I can't do it. But anyway, it started very much like the kind of synth track, reminding me of Sweet Dreams. Are made of this. That one. Sorry, I don't sing usually. Anyway, but yes, that's what was spinning through my head. That cinema. I basically think. Do you know what? How I'll liken this? It falls into a similar category to The Last Jedi for me. And what I mean by that is, The Last Jedi was at least dared to do something different, but I love the cinematography, and I think that movie had some great shots, and I think that movie had some interesting concepts, but largely didn't deliver. And I think that's very much what Mandalorian and Grogu did here. Some interesting concepts, very good cinematography. I enjoyed it. Even, yes, it was a CGI and puppet fest, but that's kind of Star Wars. It has been for a long time. But I think the planets looked great. I think the idea of going to Nal Hutta, I think the idea of Shikari, which personally I would have just made Nar Shaddaa, by the way, would have been a bit more sense within the Hutt kind of empire lean. Obviously, admittedly, you would have to have Johnny Cohen be something different, because you'd have to have basically a Hutt warlord who's going again. You could make it more Hutt aligned anyway. And I think that would have been actually better if you made the movie more and more about the Hutts and kind of really pushed the Hutts as a group that's going to be like more of a problem going forward. Because it didn't feel like they're going to be relevant again. But basically, I think they looked great. I think the CGI looked well done, actually. I don't think there's many points where I was going, yes, it's obviously CGI, and you can tell, especially when you have Zeb right next to Mando, for example. But do I think it's bad CGI within that? No, I wouldn't say it. Yes, it does look jarring, but that's what CGI sort of is in a way. You can't make an alien look more real because they aren't real. But I think the movie was... It's what a lot of people have said. It wasn't offensive. And I think... I dread to say, I think that's what maybe Star Wars needed right now. Something where people can go to the cinema and go, yeah, it was all right. And I think having that kind of new base point for Star Wars might be a good thing. It might be decent for most of the fans, your general fan base, or even maybe people who aren't necessarily fans but go and watch these types of movies when they drop. To have a kind of like unifying experience of, oh, that was a half decent Star Wars movie, is probably a good thing for the franchise overall. Obviously not so much for the diehard fans, and of course it doesn't pay off a lot of the things we would hope for from the Mando TV show and the wider universe, Ahsoka, other stuff we've learned. But the franchise has to survive as a whole. I went, and I usually do this. I think you guys know this by now. I always go with a family member, whoever that ends up being, who can kind of give insight to that from a standpoint that they are not a fan like I am, or they are not as well versed in that media as I am, and so they can tell me how they felt about it. Like, because then I get an idea of how the general populace might view that film. So I went with my mum to this one, and my mum was saying that like I actually really enjoyed it. It was really fun. So like that's the general audience view. That's the viewpoint of the audience. Like they enjoy this film, and from the typical standpoint, the idea that it's a fun general romp. There's loads of people online saying about the levels of the water wouldn't be right like that. That's weird, and like all of these production weird things about like, oh, Mando putting his helmet on all the time, like Pedro Pascal was even on set. No one watching this movie who's a general audience goer is caring about that stuff. Like, we care about it, and I do kind of care about it too, because you want something to be like on that next level up. But no one in the general audience is caring about that type of stuff, and I think that's maybe where this movie succeeds the most, in that it doesn't piss anyone off, and that's what a lot of people are saying is bad. And on the level of, how do I put it? There's two different levels, right? There's movies and then there's cinema. And I'm not saying that either is bad, but you've got popcorn movies, and then you've got things that make you think, make you react, and that make you care, and that make you feel. This is a movie. This isn't so much cinema. And Star Wars has varied in between over the years. But I think ultimately, this movie hits more the movie mark. Sorry, this piece of media, however you want to call it, hits more the movie the mark than the cinema mark. Now, does that mean that it's bad? No. And I think that's the point. I think that, sometimes you want a popcorn movie. Sometimes you want to go in and watch something and enjoy something that feels Star Warsy or is Star Wars, but isn't like, oh, all right, I've got to watch these 10 different shows. I've got to understand this. I've got to do that. This big climactic battle. Like, it was just a thing. It was just Mando being cool for 2 hours. Grogu being cute for 2 hours. Having a few callbacks to the Clone Wars for those people who were going in from that era. All that type of stuff. And I think that was the win, right? That was the great win of this. And do I want the next movie to be a little bit more, if they do another Mandalorian and Grogu, to be a little bit more involved in, a little bit more understanding of that larger lore and do a little bit more with that? Yes. And would I like it if they did a larger movie that kind of encompassed all the Disney Plus shows and like what's been building towards there in a way that includes Mando and Grogu in a bigger plot? Again, yes. But for this one, I have to admit, it was fun. And fun tops everything else. Fun tops thoughtful, fun tops heartfelt, because if you enjoy it, you just enjoy it. And that's the truth for a lot of people here. And I really am, you guys know I'm dubious of Dave Filoni and the way he goes on with stuff sometimes. And I don't think some of the stuff he does is great. Even some of the stuff in this movie, if I was to go and nitpick it all, again, not great. But overall, and this is the standpoint that I'm sticking to, I think him and Jon Favreau have done well on this. And I didn't think I didn't want to say that. Not that I wanted Star Wars to fail, but I don't think those guys have been particularly great in their sandbox of late. So I thought this was going to be more of that, and I was kind of prepared with that in mind, and then it didn't happen. I was going in, and I was going, I can't find anything I really kind of find egregious in this, like nothing that would like so fundamentally make me hate the movie. Do you know what I mean? Like the stuff in there, like do I dislike the idea that they couldn't be asked to make up names for characters, and the ones that they did are just the actor's name changed to Star Wars, like a Star Wars-ified? Yeah, a little bit, but is that impacting me really? No. It's not the same as like absolutely retconning like a huge part of the universe, which none of this movie did. And actually, to be fair, Dave Filoni is kind of a lot of the time touted as being too cameo festy and too reliant on his old characters. And of course, there were some characters in this movie, Rotta and Embo, technically the twins, because they showed up in the Boba Fett show, that obviously were returns, but I don't think overall that any characters in this movie didn't earn its place, and it was just cameo slop. So yeah, I have to sit here and say and swallow my own words and say that I did enjoy this one, and I'm going to leave it there. So before I further have to embarrass myself by saying this movie was good, no, I'm kidding. I'm glad that it was fun, and I hope a lot of people feel the same, because that means that Star Wars is healing. That's what it feels like. Hopefully, maybe, who knows? But guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking through The Mandalorian with me. As always, I'll see you guys next week to talk about Spider Noir. Until then, bye guys.